Hey, NellyJai here, and today I'm going to be going over 3 Crusader builds in Throne and Liberty. Now, whether you just want to do a bit of farming, whether you want to go into the dungeons, or whether you want to spot a PvP, these builds will have you all covered. Just to preface that this video does not go into detail about every single skill that's used in the builds. I'm going to be putting those up and you can take a screenshot or you can pause the video on each of the builds, but more so calling out the core skills that make these builds really work. So without further ado, let's dive into this. So, the AoE Farming Build. There are 3 core skills that make up the bulk of this build. The skills are Provoking Roar. This is your AoE taunt. This is when if you taunt all the mobs to come and hit you. The second one is the Ice Tornado. Now, the Ice Tornado just means you spin around really quickly and it's a Greatsword skill. And the last one is a Sword and Shield passive, which is Spectrum of Agony. This is really core to this because every time a taunted mob gets hit by any of your attacks or skills, it extends the taunt duration, so it keeps the mobs coming to attack you and closely knitted in. And also, as you hit any mobs that are being affected by taunt, you create an AoE within a 3-meter radius. Now talk about serious AoE. And one thing to mention is that you're going to be using Precision Dash to tag mobs and to maneuver around the battlefield, and you're going to be using things like Strategic Rush and Chain Hook to kind of pull all those mobs and clump them up together. Now let's see that in action. So right off the bat, what you want to be doing is using your Precision Dash to dash between mobs and tagging them. So that allows you to reach and cover a lot of area whilst pulling a lot of mobs. One thing to note is that all the ranged mobs that are attacking you, you can hide behind a cover like this and line of sight them so they come closer. Use Strategic Rush to pull them into one area and Chain Hook for any stragglers. As the mobs are high level, I Devastating Smash, Da Vinci Counter Barrier into Provoking Roar, Ice Tornado, and to finish off, I use Ice Cleaving for more damage. I Precision Dash away from the mobs and then back in to trigger a heavy hit Guillotine Blade, and then using Death Blow to finish whatever is left. One thing I forgot to mention is that Ice Tornado hits 12 times. When you hit the mobs 10 times, the mob becomes icebound. Once the mob has been icebound, if you hit them with cross cleaving, you do a lot more damage. So that's why you have to do it in that order. Other things to mention is that counter barrier, once they hit you, you reflect damage. So it builds really well when you do a Provoking Roar on top of them. Now, one last thing to do is just to show you the skill specialization before we move on to the next build. So at this point, if you want to pause and just take a screenshot of what skill specializations are used for Greatsword, as well as a Sword and Shield, do so. I won't go over everything here. Thank you. Now let's move on to the dungeon clearing build. When it comes to the dungeon running build, there are 3 key skills that I want to specifically mention. The first one being Blood Devotion, or when you take the skill specialization, it becomes Devoted Sanctuary. Basically what this does is that it connects you with nearby allies and it gives them additional damage boost. Another one is Great Fury. Now this is what is normally your Bastion, which is a defensive skill, but when you take a skill specialization, anybody that's within your aura gives them an extra 100 skill damage boost, which is absolutely huge for burning those bosses. And the last one that I want to be talking about is the Will Breaker. Now the Will Breaker debuffs the boss. It actually removes 450 defense from the boss. So these are the key skills that make this specific build a lot stronger when it comes to doing dungeons. Before we go into some gameplay, here's the skill specializations used for the dungeon clearing build. Greatsword, Sword and Shield. Okay, everything's popped, go. Alright, come close to me again, full buffs. Alright, it's all up. Alright, full buffs are up. Holy this is huge. Look at this DPS, man. F***ing Jesus. One thing to mention is that you can switch out your utility spell. In this case, I'm using Strategic Rush to push mobs into each other. And in this other case, I'm using Chain Hook to pull mobs closer to me so I can AoE them down. Okay, and finally, build number 3. the PvP build. Now this PvP build is specifically catered to large scale PvP. Now there is opportunity to tweak a couple of skills for the lower scale one, but for all intensive purposes I'm going to be going over the large scale skill set. So as you can see here, we've got my skill set at the bottom here, but the main thing that I want to call out is 4 skills. First of all is Annihilation Blade. This sets up and basically amplifies all of your sword and shield skills, which you're going to be using a lot of. Another one is Annihilating Slash, which coupled with all of the skill specializations that you can put on it, makes it so you can cover a large area and slow and disrupt a lot of people. And the last 2 spells, which I think is the bread and butter and one of the by far like broken things about sword and shield, is the counter barrier and the skill specialization that reduces piercing strikes, basically your shield bash, and then of course the piercing strike move. So the specific skill specialization that I'm talking about is when you activate counter barrier, and every time you get hit while counter barrier is up, you reduce the cooldown of piercing strike by 0.5 seconds per every time you get hit. So in large scale, when you get hit about 12 times, you basically reset the strike. So you can literally keep spamming that button there and do a lot of damage. So here it is. Here's the skill specializations for shield. And here's the skill specializations for Greatsword that I use for this build. And we'll go straight into some gameplay. As a tank, you're going to be looking for clumps of enemies to engage on using Devastating Smash. As you can see here, I see a clump, I jump in. The next spell I use is Annihilation Blade to buff up my sword and shield skills. I then use Annihilating Slash to stop any enemies from passing by me easily. This reduces their move speed. I then set up, I use Counter Barrier to proc my defenses and to get ready for my shield strike spam. As you can see here, I spam into a clump of enemies and I get a couple of kills before dying myself. As a tank, you're going to be taking a lot of damage at the start, so it's imperative that you pop the defensives before. So pop Bastion and Mortal Pride before engaging with Devastating Smash. Most of the times what you want to be doing is using Annihilating Blade to stop people from running away as your team uses AoE to clear them up. Remember, you're playing a supportive role. Sure, playing a tank isn't flashy at all, but when you can do things like this and stay in the fight for so long, it makes you feel like a superhero sometimes. One thing to note is that you can play this PvP tank build slightly different. So for example, if you don't want as much movement with Precision Dash and you want to play a little bit more supportive using Blood Devotion, what you can do is take that instead of a certain skill. Now, one thing that makes Blood Devotion really powerful as well is that you can link it with multiple teammates so that you take their damage if they receive that damage. So taking Devoted Sanctuary, transferring more damage to yourself and increasing that duration really allows you to protect your team as you use this skill, because that damage will be transferred to you. And an alternative, if you don't want to play more of a supportive tank, but you want a little bit more of a kick view when you get to those backline, is that you can play Guillotine Blade. So you can take Guillotine Blade with the charge, with the AoE damage and with the cooldown reduction, so that you can really start to smack those individual targets or those high priority targets at the end. So as I said, you can either play Devoted Sanctuary or you can play Guillotine Blade if you want a little bit more damage. That's it for this build. Now I'm going to be moving on to how you can customize this for slightly different scenarios. So you might be going, hey Nelly, so what if I want to do Gate of Infinity challenge dungeons? Which build do I use? Well, that's actually quite easy. So if you go into your skills, in the boss and dungeon one, all you need to do is make one change. And that one change is to remove your chain hook that you normally take in dungeons with Precision Dash. There you go. This build is great for those Gate of Infinity challenge dungeons. Another scenario might be, so hey Nelly, what if I want to do some arenas? Well, that one's a little bit more complicated, but quite easy still. So what you do is you go into your PvP build over here. What you probably don't want in arenas is Immortal Pride, just because not many people actually hit tanks in there. You don't want Annihilation Blade, and you do not want Annihilation Slash, because you're just not going to be able to hit the same amount of mass that you do in large scale PvP. Instead, what you're going to want is actually a Death Blow to do more damage. What you want also is Ascending Slash to be able to prone your targets. At the end of the day, what you also want is Precision Dash. Remember, as you're not using some of those skills now, it's essential that you reallocate those skill specialization points. So you don't have Annihilating Slash anymore, so we can remove that. Annihilation Blade, we can also remove that. And since we're not using Immortal Pride, we can also remove the skill sets or skill specialization points there. What you want to do is go into your Greatsword skills, and one thing that's really important in Arena is the binding. So once you hit someone with Precision Dash, you're going to be binding them, and the skill distance helps you be able to catch people out in the open quite easily. Death Blow is definitely one of your high DPS skills, so you want to max that out in terms of skill specialization, especially the one with doing more damage to prone. And the reason why is because with Ascending Slash, after you've binded them using Precision Dash, you can use Charging Slash to prone them. And at the end of the day, the last point or the last 5 points that you can do is up to you. Personally, I like to use extending the Charging Slash so you can prone the target for a bit longer. So this is the final skill specialization for the Arena build. This is your Greatsword, this is your Sword and Shield, and these are your final skills. Let's jump into some Arena action. Right at the start, what you want to be using is Precision Dash to get close to your enemies. It's Ascending Slash to prone them. You want to use Death Blow into Guillotine Blade to do as much damage. Now if they manage to escape, what you want to do is Devastating Smash to get back on top of them before finishing off with a Death Blow again. Remember, we can push people off so that they're out of the fight, and if they're running away, you can use Chain to pull them in and use your combos to finish them off again. That's it for now. Hopefully my free Crusader builds was useful for you. If it was, please consider giving this video a like and subscribe. And if you have any questions to ask, please use the comment section below. I'd love to see you in the next video. See ya.